Welcome to Thank You for Your Reply, where we dive deep into the strategies and insights of real estate's most innovative professionals. I'm your host, Rich Pedersen. Each episode, we explore the real practices driving success in today's market. No fluff, no pitches, just real conversations with real experts sharing real results. In this episode, we are joined by Will Lawrence, CEO of Lone Star Development in Houston, Texas. We had a great conversation about commercial real estate development, and particularly flex space properties, as well as how he got his start in the business. And it began with a car wash business. Before we dive in, please make sure you like and subscribe. Your engagement helps keep the show running. Without further ado, here we go. Okay. Hello, everybody. Rich Pedersen here with the Reply AI, doing our Thank You for Your Reply podcast. Today, we are talking to Will Lawrence of Lone Star Development, and we're going to be talking about commercial and residential real estate development construction. So thank you, sir, for coming on, spending your time with us today.
Pleasure, Rich. Good to be here.
What is your number one source for securing new development opportunities right now, and how has that changed over the past years?
Well, the new development opportunities that we have, that we're engaged in right now and that we're looking at in our pipeline are all deals that we find ourselves. My two partners and I are familiar with the market area, being the greater Houston area. And we can identify certain demographic qualities about different neighborhoods and different parts of the city that would lend itself to what has developed to be the main focus of our development efforts. We tend to lean in the office warehouse distribution, or we call it flex space. That's the office warehouse space. And we can pretty much, pulling up some basic demographics or just driving the area and looking at the competitors, determine whether a particular market is suitable for the type of investment that we want to do. How has it changed over the past few years? The economy here in Texas has been great. As probably everyone's heard, a lot of people are fleeing from the blue states and the high tax states to the red states, and Texas and Florida being the two leading states that have a very business-friendly environment. So we have not seen any challenging factors come into play here in Houston. It's been a very, very good environment for real estate development.
Okay. Sort of diving right into the questions. I wanted to give you an opportunity as well to give a brief overview of Lone Star Development, and also touch on this cool flex space property that you guys have been working on.
In 1991, I built a car wash in Houston. And from that one car wash in Houston, we built an entire chain of 13 car washes around the Houston area. We were the second largest in Houston. And in 2013, we were acquired by a private equity firm that paid north of $40 million for the chain of car washes. So I found myself at the age of 58, 59, retired. And that lasted about 30 days, and then decided that I had to do something. I think that was a joint decision by my wife and I. And I found a piece of property. A broker actually found it for me down in South Houston. That was this concept of flex space. Picture a complex with about 3 or 4 buildings, each building being about 10,000 square feet, they being wider than deeper. So figure a 10,000 square foot building that's maybe 200 feet wide and 50 feet deep. And now chop it up into 1,000 square foot little suites. So you've got this building that's broken down into 1,000 square foot suites. In the back of the building, there's a 10 by 10 roll-up overhead door, garage door. And in the front of the building, there's usually a small 10-foot by 15-foot office. This is the type of real estate that attracts small business. Frank's Plumbing and Heating, Steve's T-shirt and screen printing, Mary's embroidery, and all these different sort of, not just cottage, but legitimate businesses, but small businesses rent these spaces. Some of them take 1 unit, some of them take up to 3 or 4 units. And this is where they ply their trade. This is where they base their business out of. It's usually a scenario where the wife or a family member is in the front doing the books, working the office, and the male, or could be female, counterpart is out doing work. Those are the spaces that we focus on primarily. So this broker brought me this property in South Houston, consisted of about 25,000 square feet in 4 buildings, about 7,500 square feet per building. It was about 85, 90% leased. And he sold it to me. The broker brought it to me, and I bought it for $2.1 million. It was a good price, and it was based on a cap rate. And I took the property and cleaned up the property, increased the rents, bought some real estate management software that allowed tenants to pay online so I don't have to take checks and go to my mailbox and deposit checks. And we really professionalized and legitimatized the business. And we added on 1 or 2 small buildings on the property. And 2 years ago, we refinanced the property and it was appraised at $8 million. So we took a $2 million investment and quadrupled the value just by applying some professional business standards and practices and professionalizing the way we operated the business. And that's how I got my start. And from there, we looked to buy other properties. And the last project that we just did, we bought raw land, bought almost 4 acres of raw land, tore out all the well, there weren't any trees, so I don't want any tree huggers getting mad at me. But, we cleared the field and we built 44,000 square feet of office warehouse space.
So the same model
that
wide.
that we started with. And we've done that over the years. We've acquired some and we've built some. So we now own and manage about 150,000 square feet of office warehouse space.
And is that new one, is that still being developed, or is it completely?
It's finished. It was finished about 6 months ago. We finished the last of the, when we were done, we had to install a sprinkler system. Well, we had installed a sprinkler system. We had to have a fire alarm company come in and install all the hardware monitoring and computer devices. And so figure about 6 months ago, and we are now 70% leased and cash flowing.
Cool.
Yeah.
I saw a video of it. I think it was probably when from 6 months ago. I think on your LinkedIn page of like a drone shot flying over it.
Yep. I took my drone up there and filmed it and flew around the project. Took the drone out there one night as we were pouring about 100,000 square feet of concrete in the middle of the night with the pump trucks and stuff. Almost flew the drone into one of the big arms of one of the pump trucks. We've got some great videos on our website of the project.
You hear that, ladies and gentlemen? He does his own drone footage. Okay. Can you walk us through your most successful strategy for attracting investors and stakeholders that doesn't involve paid advertising? You kind of already touched on it a little bit, I think.
Yeah, well, in the past, the investors have been limited to family members. It's myself, my wife, and my 3 sons. But we are developing a project right now called The Shops at Tyson Cherry. And we've decided to take in outside investor money for the first time. It's a small raise. The project is probably $5 million in total. We are raising about $1.2 million. We've already purchased the land, which has got a value of about $600,000. So if you take the 1.8, the 1.2 that we'll raise, and the 1.8, it's about 30%. And we've already received our commitment for 70% financing from a bank that we've done business with for a long time. But to answer your question, we decided just to do family and friends this first time. And I sent out a bulk email to friends and family, and we raised $1.1 million in probably about 38 minutes.
Wow.
And
How big was that list?
Well, the list wasn't that big. It was probably only about 40 people.
Wow.
And of the 40 people, we've taken in 22 investors. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, sure, that sounds like a great idea, Bill. Count me in, but, when I'm ready to have you write a check, it might be a different story. Oh, my kid needs a new car, or, I got to pay college tuition or something. And so about a month ago, emailed individually each of these 22 or 24 people that had committed and said, okay, we've spoken. We're getting ready to break ground. We're getting ready to have the legal documents sent to you. Are you sure you want to invest this $50,000 that you had committed to? And the overwhelming response was, well, I said 50, but I'd like to invest 100. Can I? And we had to tell about 80% of the people, no, we had no more room. So we were fully subscribed. And if you ask me what was the one thing that attracted people to this deal, it was because we structured this deal in a manner in which there's no preferred rate of return for the general partners. There is no waterfall effect for the general partners. There's no pref rate of return. There's no catch up, no GP catch up. These are all terms in which, as a project becomes more successful, the sponsor, being me, reaps a bigger benefit, or the investor reaps a bigger benefit. We decided that we were going to do everything pari passu. Everybody was equal. Your $100,000 was the same as my $100,000. If you owned 8.7% of the deal, I owned 8.7%. And when we cut checks for $100,000 in distribution, you got $8,750. I got $8,750. And I believe it's because that is so rare in the real estate world of raising capital that everybody said, well, I mean, I'm going to rise and fall with the sponsor. So it added a lot of credibility.
Everyone's got the same stake.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. What's one common belief about real estate development that you found to be completely wrong?
Completely wrong? Well, just about everything I've done has been completely wrong. But seriously, I think some people they use too much leverage. And as we've seen over the past 3 years, as interest rates have gone from literally zero to, I know big developers who are paying 12 and 15% for mezzanine debt. And when you've got a project that's got good margins, but you've got 70% or 60% of your project has just seen its interest rate quadruple, and puts a lot of pressure. So we tend to be wary of too much leverage. We won't do a deal at less than 70% debt to equity, or 30% equity to the total value of the deal. We prefer to be in the 40 to 45% range, because that just gives us the ability to weather interest rate challenges or things like that. But a lot of people think the holy grail of real estate investing is leverage. And that's not always true.
You said as a term that you used there, I just wanted to ask for if you could explain the mezzanine deck.
Mezzanine deck?
What is that? Or debt. Okay. Yeah. What does that mean?
Well, if you've got a $10 million project and you've got $3 million worth of equity and you need $7 million worth of financing, but the bank is only comfortable with about 5 million, you've got that stack of about $2 million that you're short. And usually mezzanine lenders, they call them, because they sit behind the bank, but they'll extend that capital and that loan, but usually at much higher interest rates. And they call that mezzanine debt.
For that. How do you, shifting into a little more day-to-day things, how do you structure your typical workday to maximize productivity while managing multiple construction projects and maintaining your work-life balance?
Well, number one, we've divided up the responsibilities of our partnership. Matt, my son who works with me, is directly responsible for all leasing activities and property management activities. Jason, our third partner, is in charge of all construction, and he builds the construction budgets. He'll work with the architects. He'll file the plans, obtain the permits, and then he'll send the plans out to multiple vendors. We like to get at least 3 bids in for each, portion of the work. If before I became partners with Jason and before my son Matt was back from Germany, and I used to do it myself, it was too much, because you either are going to be a property manager and deal with your tenants and effectively manage that relationship or those relationships, which are very important, because if you tick off a tenant and make him feel unloved and unwanted, he's not going to be a tenant anymore. As soon as he leases up, he's gone. So that's a full-time job, property management. So Matt handles that. I handle all the administrative, financing, and banking and investor relations. And Jason handles everything related to construction. And by dividing the work up between the 3 of us in that manner, we still find that we need additional help. We have a full-time accountant who does all of the day-to-day entries and bookkeeping processes, but I supervise her, and Matt takes care of all of the tenants and the building operations, and Jason is busy building projects.
Okay. So it's a very small team, but you guys have distributed your tasks effectively.
Yeah. And also we're, doing one project at a time with an eye on another project somewhere in the pipeline. I am sure that if we had 2 or 3 projects that we were actively engaged in, we'd find ourselves spread too thin and we would have to onboard some additional people. Now, I'd probably have to have somebody assisting Jason in project management, who's on the job sites every day, coordinating the work of the contractors and the architect. If we had, right now we have about 50, we call them doors, tenants. We have about 50 tenants. Once we get to about 100 tenants, Matt's going to need some additional help. The only person who won't need any additional help is me, because what I do is so insignificant and so little. So I won't need help for a while.
Yeah. Okay. You might consider some AI tools to expand those. Instead of hiring a whole person,
we have utilized, or Matt has utilized AI, ChatGPT or Copilot to engage with a lot of the tenants, a lot of the correspondence with tenants and prospective tenants. And, at first it seems like something fun to do. Let me ask ChatGPT how to write this letter. But when you think about the fact that he might have to have some written correspondence with a half a dozen or a dozen tenants, and he's got to sit there and think through, and how do I best want to approach this, and how do I want to write it, and write it clearly and professionally, having the ability to ask, ChatGPT or Copilot or any one of the others, write me a letter to this tenant who seems to have a problem keeping his dog inside the unit. and it will spit out the, 6-paragraph letter that Matt just sends off. And rather than spend an hour composing and writing this letter, he spent 5 minutes. So we're finding in a lot of the communication and also in some of the, in some areas where we don't know what decision to make about some sort of financial analysis about should we do a interest rate swap or should we fix the rates now or should we float for the next 6 months? You ask AI and it tells you, hey, this is the best course for you.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be something that takes me a week to figure out.
Yeah, it's incredible how the technology has improved in 6 months.
Oh, yeah.
So you said earlier about like Texas hasn't really had much of a development slump or like a real estate slump. What's been your most effective strategy for standing out in a competitive development market like that?
Good question, because we do have a lot of competition. I'm not the only rocket scientist who figured out that building office flex space in Texas is a good idea. There are lots of other rocket scientists beside me. We will build our buildings to look nicer, be more efficient, and we will include as many as we can afford sort of amenities that make our buildings sort of stand out. For example, at the project that we just finished, we purchased a $100,000 4-foot by 8-foot electronic messaging board from a world-leading company, Daktronics. And that gives us the ability to say to all of our tenants, give us all your logo, your advertising, your promotion, your specials, your marketing messages, and let us put them out in front of the public on this big sign in full color that runs 24 hours a day. Something else that we've done is we'll contract with a provider to bring in a 10 gigabit fiber optic line for internet access. And then we'll put in the infrastructure and spend maybe $20,000, $30,000 wiring up every suite with fiber cable. So when a tenant comes in and says, okay, what do I do about internet? We say, just plug your device in, you're ready to go. And they've got guaranteed 1 gigabit throughput.
Wow.
That's something that they might have to pay $250 a month for. So by doing some of these things, we insulate our suites. It's hot here in Texas, especially during the summer, but you can walk into one of our warehouses that's not air conditioned and not die of heat stroke within 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So little things like that we'll do.
I had a little thought when you were talking about flex spaces in Texas. Just going to throw it out there in case anyone wants to use the name Flexes in Texas.
Flexes in Texas.
Flexes in Texas LLC. I don't know, something like that. If I was a property developer, I might do it, but I'm not. Can you share a major mistake you made early in your development career and what you learned from it?
This goes back to, I'll give you one big mistake in the car wash business that's related to real estate. And then I'll give you one that's in a real estate business. When we opened up our first car wash in Houston, the property was owned by an elderly Greek gentleman, had a funny name, Christopher Papasakalaria was his Papasakalaria.
Wow.
And we were open about 6 months to a year, somewhere around there. And the rent was expensive. We did not own the property. We were doing a ground lease, and we built this car wash on his property. And I know that's a successful model for Starbucks and Wendy's and McDonald's and all of Walgreens and CVS. They feel that they would rather deploy their capital in their business rather than in the dirt and building. It's a better business model for them just to pay rent as a business expense and deploy their capital buying more bottles of Bayer aspirin or more boxes of Sherwin-Williams paintbrushes. But for a small business person, unless you have that real estate, you have very little to leverage when you are looking for financing, because you don't own the dirt, you don't own the building. You're just sort of like a tenant, you know? So Mr. Papasacolaria came to me after about 6 months or 12 months and said, Bill, would you like to buy the property from me? And I turned to my wife and I said, he wants $2 million for this property. And we had this brand new car wash. And I could make sense of it, but I was afraid to take that leap. When we sold the company 21 years later, the rent on that property, by the way, Mr. Papasacolaria died a couple of years after that, and his son, Dr. Papasacolaria, took over running the property, and he was not so easy to deal with. When we sold the company in 2013, I was paying $19,000 a month rent. Had I bought the property, my debt service probably would have run me about $12,000 a month. So by not buying the property, I threw away about $85,000 to $100,000 a year. And at the end of 21 years, had nothing to show for it. Yeah. But that was one lesson. In my current real estate career, I think the one mistake that I made was selling a property that was profitable because someone had offered us a really good price. We had bought a building for $900,000. I immediately got a national tenant who occupied this 10,000 square foot building. It was Motorola, the radio company. And the building was cash flowing from day one. And somebody came by and offered me $1.3 million, a $400,000 profit in about 11 months. And I said, okay. And I sold it. And I should have never sold it. That was a big mistake. If you've got an income producing asset, just hold on to that as long as you can. So my motto is now just do not sell.
Like a lot of people say about stock market or crypto, like just
hold
on to it.
Yep. Hold on to it.
Okay. Those are good lessons, expensive lessons, but
yep, expensive ones. Yes.
How do you, so this kind of relates to an earlier question. How do you build and maintain relationship with contractors, investors, and municipal authorities to ensure smooth project execution and future opportunities?
The project that we're about to start right now, in which we've taken in outside investors, friends and family, was a piece of property that was zoned residential, even though it was a corner carve-out of a large development. It was on a hard corner, and the development behind it was several hundred homes. And the developer had carved out this one corner, but had never changed the zoning. It was still zoned residential. Well, we saw the property and knew the property had great potential, so we went ahead and bought the property, and then learned after we bought it and owned it that it was still zoned residential. So we had to take it through the process of getting it rezoned for commercial, which sometimes can be challenging when you're dealing with a neighborhood that's sitting right behind you that is filled with 300 people, all of whom have a different opinion. And trying to manage that process was left to my son, Matthew. And he first put together a great 2-3 page information sheet on what we were going to do. He then wrote a letter, and I think he might have used ChatGPT, but he wrote a letter to the neighborhood and hand-delivered it to every single house in the neighborhood. Then he threw a meeting. He went to the Chamber of Commerce and asked them if he could borrow one of their meeting rooms, and threw a meeting in which he invited all the neighbors to come in so he could share with them in person what the development was going to be. And he, brought in some snacks and beverages and held this. And because of his personal involvement and his commitment, he won over the entire neighborhood, in which the neighborhood overwhelmingly supported it. So the city granted us the zoning change for commercial. You can't do that unless you're going to manage that relationship down on a person-to-person level. Just thinking that, well, I'm a real estate developer, I'm a big real estate maven, and I'm going to just tell the residents, oh, this is going to be great. You're going to love it. You're going to love the donut shop. You're going to love the dentist. You're going to love all these services. The only way that happens is by engaging with them personally on a one-to-one basis. And that's a big lesson that we learned. And we've applied that in our relationship with the city of Tomball, where this property lies and where the property that we just finished lies. And by working with Tomball and meeting them and being professional in our approach and our communication with them, I got a text the other day from Matthew. I don't know where it is right now, but Matthew sent me a screenshot of a text he received from one of the chief building inspectors for the city of Tomball. He was leaving the city of Tomball to go to work for Harris County, which is the county that Tomball and a lot of others say. Houston sits inside of Harris County. So he was leaving to take this, I guess, greater position, or this position that gave him, more responsibility. And he wrote a personal text to Matt telling him how much he had enjoyed his relationship, how much he enjoyed working with him, and how appreciative he was of the fact that Lone Star Development was just very personal in their relationship. When things got fouled up, as they always do with the city more often than not is going to say, no, you didn't pass inspection, there's this item or that item. Most people attack the inspector or the plan checker, physically attack them, but they push back on it. Matt always, and Jason would always deal with them in a very professional manner. Hey, tell me how we can make this work. Tell me what we can do to make your job easier. And it resulted in Matt getting this very nice, flattering text message from a city inspector. So that's how we've tried to differentiate ourselves from other people in this business.
Cool. Yeah. I like that. I'm getting a lot of like thread of that, like the sort of grassroots sort of strategy.
We're
people
not,
I've been talking to.
I'm not, I'll use an exaggerated example. I'm not Donald Trump, and I don't have a billion-dollar real estate empire behind me, and I don't have a throng of lawyers and marketing executives and financial wizards and gurus. We're two or three guys trying to build projects to make money, to enhance the area that people live in with a business center that offers people a place to conduct their business. A lot of the people who become our tenants are people who live in the area and they need a place to conduct their business. We had I'll share this with you really quick. There was a lady who makes pasta. The name of her company is Della Casa Pasta. She's from Argentina. She's not from Italy. And she makes pasta and delivers it to about 100 restaurants in the greater Houston area. And she was doing this out of her garage, home, and her little rented storage unit. And she was just stretched to the limit of her capabilities. She, trying to work in an environment that just was not conducive to her operations. She came to us and she wanted to rent space. And she originally wanted to rent warehouse space in the back of the development. At this one project, we had a retail building sitting up front, 11,000 square feet. That was right up front, close to the road. And we would put retail businesses in that building and, commercial businesses in the office warehouse behind. And we talked to her about opening up a retail store and selling her products in the retail store, having a little cafe where people could sit and consume her products, and then putting her commercial kitchens right there on display. And she's an incredible success. She has people in there 6 days a week buying her pasta. And it's incredible to watch how she's taken her business from one concept and just expanded it. We gave her the opportunity. We gave her the space to do it. And she's risen to the occasion.
Wow.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah. What did you say?
Della Casa Pasta.
Della Casa Pasta. Okay. Give her a shout. I'll put a shout out in the show notes.
Yeah.
Well.
Her name is Luisa from Della Casa Pasta.
Hi, Luisa. What's one construction management or project planning system in your business that you couldn't live without, and why?
From the construction aspect of it, Microsoft Project is probably the go-to program. I know that there are other programs and other software that are tailored directly to construction, but Jason has been using Microsoft Project to plan out his lead times, his delivery times for materials, construction materials, plan his jobs when he needs to schedule electricians to come in, do groundwork, then come back 2 months later to start doing exterior work. He's used that extensively, and we all have a view into the calendar so we can constantly monitor it. But Jason's the one working with Microsoft Project every day. The tool that we all use is a communication tool, probably like Slack or Teams or one of these others, in which we do file sharing, we do voice communications, video communications, messaging, texting, all on one platform. And we found that to be just indispensable, because I'll be on this podcast with you and Matt will need something and I'll see something drop in and I can just drop a file in and communicate with him without, pausing. So we use that tool and, of course, Microsoft Project. And, of course, everybody lives by email. I mean, if we had to write the amount of letters that we send by I don't think what did we do before email?
Had typists that were just typing away on typewriters.
The post office is probably a lot busier.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Progress.
Yep.
Or something. How do you handle challenging market conditions like material cost increases or labor shortages when you're managing project timelines and budgets?
Well, we are seeing that now, and we're starting to see some pressure on steel prices. Trump has threatened tariffs. I personally believe that a lot of that is meant to put pressure on other countries to comply with, what his overall strategy is, politically and also socially. But the fear of those tariffs coming into play has caused steel prices to increase. So what we've done is, even though it's early, we locked in our steel prices and our metal building components before we started to see some real effect of that pricing pressure. And the same can be held for interest rates. Although, they've settled in at that 7%, 7 to 8% range. While they were escalating, the only hedge against future increases in the interest rate was lock in your funds and hope that the banks will, honor that.
So you said that you locked in your steel price by somehow. Did you buy it ahead of time or something, or like sort of subscribe? I don't know how that works. Subscribe to it, or
well, normally when you have your plans, where we haven't finished the architectural plans, we finished all the civil plans, our drainage, our utilities, all of the stuff that goes underground. We've got a floor plan and we've got a rough building elevation. So with that floor plan and the building elevation, we went to our steel companies, one of them being Whirlwind Steel, and we said to them, this is the building we want to build. We want to incorporate some design elements. We want to include some of the features that we've had in this other building project that we just finished. We'd like to sort of lock in a price on these metal components because the component part of it is easy. It's, steel beams and girders. And you tell them what size building, they know how many steel beams and girders and girts and purlins and et cetera that they'll need. Of course, we could get a lot more granular with the pricing if we had our complete set of plans, but we've gone to them and they've given us a price on the project and we've locked it in, write a check for $100,000, give it to them. And now we've got that price. We know that metal building and the components are going to cost us $1.4 million, regardless of what happens.
Thanks for explaining that. Okay, this is our final question, and then let you get on to with your busy day, I'm sure. What's one skill you think most real estate developers overlook, but is a crucial skill for long-term success?
Patience. And I don't mean the type that you see at the doctor's office. Right? My 35-year-old son who works with me has all of the ambition and energy and drive of 12 of me. And he is ready to tackle every project and every opportunity. And what I've tried to do is I've tried to instill a sense of patience. And you don't have to react immediately. I mean, when you're presented with an opportunity, you have to respond and, you have to take advantage of the opportunity. But to learn patience, that these things tend to come together all by themselves. Not all by themselves, but they'll tend to come together. You give them the right amount of nurturing, the right environment, the right skills being applied by the right people in the right type of economic environment, and things will just, I guess, like soup, eventually come out tasting great. But, when you're making bouillabaisse, you don't stick your spoon after you threw the fish in and taste it and say, oh, this is fantastic. Yeah. It takes time. My wife and I are strong advocates of just taking time, letting things develop, having patience, not missing opportunities, but just having the ability to step back and say, well, let's just evaluate this, or let's wait until the opportunity is really perfect, not just looks good. And that's really patience, something I lack a lot of, but patience.
I think that's a perfect note to end on, the virtue of patience.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Will, for spending time with me today and talking about Lone Star Development and your in this industry in general. We're just going to, I really enjoyed our conversation, and I look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Okay, thank you, Rich. Appreciate it. Okay, have a great day.
You too. That wraps up this episode of Thank You for Your Reply. A big thank you to Will Lawrence for sharing his valuable insights with our community. To our listeners, you can find show notes and links below this video, or if you're on audio, in the show description. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe so you'll be able to catch the new episodes when they drop. Until next time, keep innovating, keep growing, and remember, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems.